Okay, we should be recording now. So where we left off last class was I mentioned ordering functions is the next set of generic structures we're going to look at. Again, we talked about for a while, we devoted probably way too much time to this topic area here, molecules, assemblies, generic structures, and archetypes, and trying to define them in terms of my hierarchy. And I think ordering functions would be generic structures, whereas we've been looking at molecules, certainly in the first course, and Stella calls them assemblies. When you have little first order chunks of stock flow structure, that's probably I don't know of a formal definition, but that's probably a molecule. Whereas if you got a bigger chunk of system dynamic stuff smeared together, that's probably, let's call that a generic structure. And an archetype might be even a higher level, my current thinking, and sort of the underlying principles of systems. But at any rate, so I would say these ordering functions are going to be in the generic structure camp, where they're generic, but they consist of molecules you've already studied that have been put together. Okay. Then we'll swing over to coflow structures and talk about why that's important. If we get through all of that, we'll start looking at resource allocation and attractiveness. And then the next one after that is learning curves. So we may get through all of that tonight or not. And then that takes us to, in terms of other things we're going to worry about, are discrete formulations. And there's a whole lot going on here. Calibration. And in fact, calibration might be best put to after the hands-on model building. I might move this to after the hands-on model building exercise. And then I don't remember if we discussed it last week or not, but we've kind of arrived at the model we're going to use for our hands-on model building example. And that's a feral dog model. And we'll get into that a little later, maybe not today, as to why we're going to do that. And actually, I needed to put another thing. What I'm going to do is move calibration down. And I think in place of calibration here, we'll put on diffusion models. And that'll take us, the diffusion models will blend perfectly with the feral dog model. So you'll see how, and then we'll start using these generic structures and molecules to build a model. Okay, so that's where we're heading. And like I say, it's still a little bit, I'm changing my mind and, whatever, but it's starting to firm up into a pretty good syllabus with lots of nice stuff. And you'll notice too, a lot of the Vensim stuff is going away, and I'm updating things, converting it into Stella, which is our current software package. All right, so let's talk about ordering functions. What in the heck do we mean by ordering functions? So I have 7 different ordering functions, and we keep adding to them and looking at strengths and weaknesses and what have you. So this is the first one. I call this ordering 1. I should bump this up a little more here so people can see as much as possible, I suppose. Now, I start off with this one for a variety of reasons. One is everybody has seen or should have seen more or less this structure in the first course. This is the structure we used when we were talking about steady state error. Does everybody remember that? We talked about, testing that adaptive expectation structure with test inputs. It was expected order rate and actual order rate. And then we took the actual order rate and we made it step and pulse and noise and a sinusoid. And then we used a ramp, right? And we said, ooh, there's steady state error when revealed when we used the ramp input, right? And then we said, the takeaway from that is not that steady state error always happens, even with that molecule, when there's growth. It can happen other times. And then we did this structure here with steady state error, and then we fixed it. Right? Does everybody remember that? And then we use that structure to do the arms race model. So let me pause there and make sure everybody remembers that. Everybody remember that? Can't tell.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I got a yes from Suzanne. Okay. All right. So one skill, hopefully that you've developed by now is to say, oh, I recognize this. Okay. It might not be identical because I didn't have stock. I had inventory, I had production, I had sales. And if you remember, I had to show you the steady state error, I put a step function in here, right? And I said, hey, there was no first order control. That's bad, but it wasn't unnecessary because the point of that little model was to show you that steady state error can happen not in a situation without growth. So if you remember, I shocked the sales with a step, right? And the proportional control, desired inventory minus inventory over tau, gave you steady state error. And then we said, well, what's the fix? Well, you have to also include, you have to replace what you're losing. So we just added back in over here, we added in, if you remember, the sales with the step, but we said that works, but it's unrealistic because the sales had the shock, and a shock by definition is shocking, meaning it's unanticipated. So to just say, just run it in there, it doesn't make any sense. So the solution was to add average sales, if you remember. And so this was, in that example, it was the max of 0 or the sum of the correction for the inventory plus average sales, right? And that cured the problem, right? And then we put it into the arbitrary. So everybody remembers that, right? So, okay, so that's this structure again.
What's the difference between the top model and the bottom model? Same structure, same.
I'm about to tell you.
Okay, all right, okay.
So we have so unlike the steady state error example, we have first order control in here. So we have desired stock, actual stock. So we have the adequacy of the stock. Okay. So stock divided by desired stock, it's dimensionless, right? I guess I didn't mention this one, sorry. And by the way, where did we get desired stock from? Well, it was in the steady state error example, that was average sales. Now I'm calling it expected sales. That's that adaptive expectation structure from economics. So this would be in units per time. This is in time. So units per time times time is units. So given on average, or I expect to be losing stuff from the stock at this rate, and given that I normally, or I would desire to have so many time units worth of stuff on hand, this is how much I need in here. Okay. So that's where the desired, so this can now change. In the steady state error example, it was a constant of 1,000, right? So now it's moving, or it can move. So in order to make sure we don't have an issue, sorry, over here, we use the safe division. You could also do this, remember, the safe division, right? So it would be stock 1 comma desired stock does the same thing, or the double slash, 2 ways of doing the same thing. It doesn't matter, your modeler's choice. But in either case, we want to prevent it from dividing by 0. So in the off chance that should happen, we don't want it to blow up our model. And if it's a big model, we're like, what happened? Where is it? Where is it? Right? Okay. So again, you should be remembering when we did first order control.
So I mean, there are other ways you can, I guess safe division is fine, but you should know if you think, you should assess whether you believe a variable will go to 0, right?
Right, but even if you don't think it will, you want to make sure your model is robust.
Okay.
Right, so like and they in Vensim you have reality checks. You can say, if this happens, then this other thing should happen or shouldn't happen. And when they developed them, they tried them on the World 3 model. And they said something like, if I remember correctly, it was, if there are no people, there should be no consumption or production or whatever it was. And it failed. Even though there were no people, there was still stuff being produced or consumed, whatever it was. And they didn't know that, right? In the, this is 20, 30 years after it was published. They never knew that there was that robustness problem in the model. So and to just say, well, we don't expect there to never be people. So who cares? Well, what if you simulate an asteroid hitting the Earth? Or that stupid volcano in Yellowstone exploding and wiping us all out? What happens? Won't really happen, but if it does, your model should behave properly. All right, anyway, so then we have our first order control structure here. And so departures are normal departures plus a shock times this effect. And the effect, of course, is 0 when the stock is empty, right? So we have first order control. All right, and that's the same down here. We're keeping things the same. Okay. So then what we have here, so we have the correction for the stock. This is your proportional control structure. Desired stock minus stock divided by tau, or the time constant, right? Remember, 3 of these gets you 95% of the way to the target, to the desired value, right? If there's one shock, right, in isolation. In electronics, it's 5 time constants that gets you basically there 100%. So if you're looking at, in this case, it's growing, but if it was dissipating, if you have like a capacitor, and when you shut off your radio or something, you don't want to get a shock. You want to have things happen in 5 time constants that it's dissipated and you don't get an electrical shock. But then remember the fix we said when we did that steady state error thing is that we want to take the maximum of, I like to spread these out here, of 0, or the correction for the stock plus the replacing what we're losing, or replacing what we expect to lose, right? So if the correction for the stock was a big negative number, right? So if you had way more in the stock than you want, then this is going to be a big negative number, right? If stock 1 is way bigger than desired stock 1, this numerator will be a giant negative number. And if that giant negative number is bigger than this, then you're going to be wanting to, you want negative arrivals, which is come and take them away, I guess, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if the way you drain the stock is with departures, not negative arrivals, or in the case of the steady state error example, negative production, you're producing negative widgets. I mean, I don't know, smashing them and destroying them or something. I don't know, whatever. No, you want to get rid of them with an outflow. Then we use a max function, right, to make sure we don't have negative arrivals. So my hope is that when you're seeing that, you might not have exactly remembered it when the first second I said it, but you should be saying now, yes, I now remember when we did that, right? And then we use that structure, not exactly, but similarly to build that arms race model, country A, country B, perceived arms, desired measure of superiority out of fear. Remember that? How we did that? Don't you hate it when the second course builds directly on the first course? All right. So anyway, I'm hoping you remember that. So we press on. So I showed you down here's just another way of doing the same thing. Okay. So, this is the same. 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 It's all the same. Now, this is a different way of doing it. If we go over here, So now I'm using the safe div over here. I had forgotten I did this. Some of this stuff, like I said, I did quite some time ago. So that's the other way of doing it, right? So that's the that's the adequacy of the stock over here, right? Call this stock ratio 2. This goes into a correction for stock 2. And the equation here is your expected departures times the correction for stock 2. Okay, so it's twice, right? Going down to 1. So when it's 1, it's 1. And so when you're at your desired level, all you're it's 1. So all you're doing is replacing, right? So this will be 1 when you're at your desired stock. So all you're doing is replacing what you expect to lose, right? But as you drop below that, you start enhancing this times a number bigger than 1, right? And you get pretty much the same, not exactly, but pretty much the same behavior. 2 ways of doing the same thing, right? Everybody sees that?
Mhm.
In some sense, it's modeler's choice. Now, why did I show you that? Other than to show you, hey, there's more than one way to do it. Okay, so this is how I was taught to do it. And when Khalid Saeed and I used to try and model together, it was one of these things where he was in Thailand at the Asian Institute of Technology, and I was at Notre Dame. And I would send him a model with this in it. And when I'd get it back, this was gone and this was in it. And I'd be like, what the heck? So I'd put it back this way and send it back to him with my changes. And then it would come back. That was removed and this would be in it. If you don't call it, he models his way. And I'm like, look, dude, my way is, and he's like, well, my way, you know, and it's like one of these things where, so we finally decided, look, one guy models, one guy writes it up, because there's more than one way to do stuff. And a lot of times he just modeled differently. It's not right or wrong. They're not identical, but they're essentially the same. But yeah, so we found there's a lot of ways that he just did stuff different than I did. And he wasn't going to give in and I wasn't going to give in. Anyway, so, all right. So any issues with this, or think about the other structures we've seen? What might be lacking here? I mean, this is nice for a lot of things, but what might be lacking? What other structures have we looked at? You know, if I were to go to here, what other things have we looked at? Because remember, we want to start combining these things. Let me give you a hint. So the table functions were just in this structure, right? So, okay. First order control was in this structure. Okay. Right. Test inputs were in that structure. We did a step function. Right. So that was all used. Expectations were in there. The simple one, adaptive expectations, we use that. Proportional control was in there. We use that. And now we're down here. What's the only thing that is not in there but could be in there of all these areas? What didn't I highlight? Should I highlight
There's
what I
no
didn't highlight? What?
forecasting in there.
Well, that's under expectations.
Okay.
Should I highlight what I didn't highlight?
Material delays. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about, briefly before we press on, what's up with that? It's not in there.
It's because it's a first order. There's only one stock.
Well,
So
okay, and there's a second one with the expectations, but right. And remember
had
when
more
we, go ahead.
if you if you had more than one stock and you had, it creates delays in the system, the more stocks you have in there. So we only had one stock in each one of those, one primary stock. There
So
wasn't,
you're hot on the trail.
but there wasn't like in the warehouse, in the store, or in the manufacturing facility, in the warehouse, in the store, where you had stocks of things that were piling up on each other and creating delays.
Okay, so remember this.
Right. And there weren't any demonstrations of material delays. Yes, we didn't go back up. You're scrolling down too fast. We didn't.
So here we are. So here's what you want to remember. Jack Homer's paper, right? And I said he was trying to this is from his dissertation model of the diffusion of new medical technologies. And notice he had a first order delay here. And he said, it's not really fitting the data very well. What if I put in a third order delay? It fit the data much better. So sometimes when you're ordering stuff and it's not arriving immediately, there's a delay. You might need a higher order delay, right? So if you need a higher order delay, what do we do here? Okay, so here we have, what does I call this? Ordering two. Okay, so what do we see here? So tell me what you see here. This is like a Rorschach ink blot test. What do you see here?
This is a second order system.
Well,
expected departures, is that a dependent variable?
yeah, so it's third order, but you're on
Third
that,
order, because
you're on
all
high-
dependent. I mean, I struggle a little bit with determining if your stock is a dependent or independent variable, which determines the number. But I guess you're just supposed to count the stocks, and most of the time you'll be right. So this would be
Yes,
a
that's
third
correct.
order delay.
Not
This would be a
delay, it's
third
third order
order
system.
system that creates potentially delays.
So we're adding a first order delay, first order material delay to the previous structure.
Right.
So we took the last, we took
Adding a first order delay.
this
to
one
the-
here,
Yeah.
and we're saying instead of a cloud here, there is a delay, a significant delay
Okay.
before it has to, FedEx puts it on a plane at O'Hare and it has to come to Logan or whatever, right? So in other words, this is not getting it done. It's not matching the time shape or the mental model of the experts or whatever. So we have to replace this cloud with a delay. So what's the
Which
simplest?
is another stock.
Yeah. So what's the simplest way of doing it? You challenge the clouds. If you remember from the first course, you challenge the clouds. So you replace the cloud with a stock. So now we're adding a first order material delay. Okay.
You know what this reminds me of is when I was in vet school, we would have rounds where we had to learn to talk about pathology and dead stuff. And there was a lot of value in actually, like, we could visualize it, but learning how to say the words, that's what this is like. It's like, I think I understand this, but I need to learn how to say the words. So this is very helpful.
Okay, good. Yeah, parallel universe and all that. So let's call your attention to certain things. So this time I've added the molecule I created for external shocks test inputs. So that's just copied and pasted in here. The next thing you should be noticing is this should pretty much look the same along with arrivals. So if you look at that, right, pretty much that is that. Okay, so, if you don't quite see that, you're like, I kind of sort of see that, you got to study that a little bit, but it's basically the same thing. But now we're adding something to it, right? So we're going to add a first order material delay. Okay, so think of it's kind of like the beer game a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the stocks create delays. So in this case, we'll just call it a supply line. Okay. Obviously, this is a model of nothing. So, you'll see as we go along, Ann Johnson's model, she would have, troops en route to the front and then troops at the front. And they don't get there instantly, right? You got to order them. Hey, I need more help up here. I'm getting overrun. My positions are getting overrun. And the commander says, okay, I'll give you more tanks or troops or whatever, but they don't get there immediately, right? So hold on, help is on the way, right? So you got to put in a delay structure. Okay, first order, third order, nth order pipeline, right? So this is, most of this here is the same. Okay, but now it now gets a little more tricky. So we have the correction for actually, I should have added this. That's the same as well. There's your correction for the stock. So here's your stock coverage. What did I say? Normal. Now I said desired. Sorry, I switched that terminology. I should have said, trying to keep these things the same. Of course, every time you try and do that, you got to go back and change everything. So hopefully that makes it consistent when you download these things. I'll repost them. Some of these are almost there. Okay, so we have the desired coverage. Here's your desired stock, your adequacy for first order control. Did I have Little's Law in there? I can't remember. Sorry. I got so many models here. Did I put in? No, I didn't put in Little's Law right up here. So I added that down here. So now we have Little's Law, right? The average residence time in the stock. Okay, Little just passed away, right? I showed you guys that last week as obituary.
Wait, is it the departure time variable the one that's?
So this is the average residence time of a unit in this stock.
But you labeled it departure time instead of average residence time. Am I getting hung up on the label rather than the equation?
Yes. You
Okay,
can call it anything you want.
okay.
And actually you can compare this to this. So you can also call it stock coverage and desired stock coverage. Did I even do that here? I can't remember. Yeah, so maybe a better way to put this would be, make this stock coverage. I don't know if I should change it. It might be less helpful than.
No, I don't know. To me, I mean, I understand that from a business perspective, the inventory stuff, but using consistent words is really helpful to me. And I realize the label doesn't dictate the equation underneath, but it helps me
Yeah, I
recognize.
understand it, but you also have to understand, I have like a bazillion models.
No,
and
no, I
if I
get it.
change something somewhere or just build it, and then I have to first remember that it's inconsistent, and then I'd have to go back and change everything, find it and change it, and then re-upload it and whatever. And then you say, is it really worth it to, or I could be using my time for something else. So sometimes it's just a time management thing that I can't realistically make everything. Same thing with
Right.
games. When I get a new insight for a gaming interface, it could be something as simple as a color. I'll look at my gaming interface because I try to make all my games the same. It's a consistent sort of template. So when people play my games, they all are familiar with things. And it'll occur to me, if I outline those buttons in red instead of black, you can see them better. But then I got to go back and if I want them consistent, revise, 21 games. And it's like, oh,
Can you just click on the departure time and the desired stocks coverage so that we can see the difference in the equations, what's similar? and
well,
what's-
this is Little's Law.
Okay. And it's
stock divided by
it's got the safety division so that it never goes negative. Is that right?
Yep. And then this is just a number of whatever weeks or months or what. I don't even know what the model's in here. So, you can, it's a constant. So you can see the actual departure time is above and below in this run right here. So, you get into, here's what we want. here's what our sales force is quoting. It'll take you so long to get your Tesla. It'll take you so long to be seated at the restaurant. So go sit on the benches outside until we call you. And then here's the actual wait time, departure time, whatever you want to call it. Right? And if there's the divergence between what you want, what you got, or what your sales force is quoted and others, and what they're really getting, or what your competitors' delivery time is and what yours is, it starts to diverge, then your competitor has an advantage. I mean, I like your steak better than this guy's steak, but you're telling me it's a 45-minute wait and this guy will seat me in 5 minutes. So, so it just depends on what you're trying to do. All right. So, so that's all the same. Here's your proportional control, desired minus actual over tau. But looky here. So now expected departures times normal arrival time. So this is in time. This is in units per time. So that's your desired supply line, the desired value in here. So in other words, in equilibrium, this and this will be this.
Right.
Your expectations will be correct. So what you want in here is enough that's coming to you such that if it takes normally this amount or the equilibrium amount, whatever you want to say, to get here, that this will be equal to this will be equal to this. So it's this times this is what you want in here. And then you correct for it with a proportional control structure. And now your orders, your initiating things, are going to be the max of 0. You correct for the stock, you correct for the supply line, and your expected departures. Now, guess what? Isn't that the beer game?
Mm-hmm.
You looked at, so you see what your customer on your left, or the deck of cards if you're the retailer, is ordering from you, and you form an expectation of what that is. You look down at your position in the beer game and you say, oh, I don't have enough, or I have too much. So you adjust your orders from your supplier accordingly, and hopefully you remember what you've already ordered, but it isn't here yet. Right?
Right.
Okay. When I don't hear anything, I'm like, you get that, or you don't get it, or I don't know. I need feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I mean, in theory, you would think you would keep track of it. What I was thinking about was all the medication we didn't have when I worked in the clinic last Thursday, and the fact that they really don't have access to what they order. They just keep ordering it, and then they're going to be overloaded with, too much ear medication.
All right. So they should play the beer game.
They should. I think we're going to.
Good. Excellent. Okay. So let me make a little room here. All right.
The thing about the beer game that makes the part of the phenomena happen is that you don't have communication to the different stages, between the different stages of the game.
Right.
Well, yeah.
So my son works a supply chain. He was working for a big company, and he says the data was a mess. He just changed jobs.
All right. So I just put it into equilibrium. So that's always a good test. Are we there? Does it work? Yes, it does. Cool. So this is what you should be doing all the time with your dissertation model. When you test a piece of structure, when you make a new piece of structure, test for all robustness, right? So here's a step. The question is, did it do the right thing? Okay. Just in the interest of time, I'll say, yes, it did. Pulse, did it do the right thing? Yes, it did. Sinusoid, yes, it did. Again, you can analyze this on your own, but in the interest of time, yes, it did. Yes, it did. Noise. And every time, I don't think I have a seed. So every time you do it, there's a different noise stream. You can see. Okay. So it's finding kind of the middle. So that's cool. How about growth? Let's go with linear growth. It's just easier to see. Wait a minute. Now we should run this out further, to be honest with you, to be sure. But it's looking like I'm getting
Steady state error.
the what?
Steady state error.
Steady state error. Okay, so it's like the beer game, but we're missing something. So what are we missing is we have to correct for growth. So this is a growth situation, right? And we're not correcting for growth. So it did a good job on all the other stuff, right? But we didn't correct for growth. So let me put this back to 0 in equilibrium. All right. So let's see what I did here. I can't remember what I did. So this is ordering 3. Okay, so there's a problem. I guess the order I should have probably, I'm not sure what the order. So let's just go in the order that I did it. So in this case, we can say, well, maybe the problem is the order of the delay, kind of a Jack Homer thing. It's not, but you know, or yeah, we got steady state error, but the delay structure just isn't right. So let's worry about steady state error next. What if I wanted to use a third order material delay instead of a first order material delay? So now you should be saying, okay, this looks like the last one. Like most of this stuff is the same, right? Correction for supply line and all that. But wait a minute, now I got a third order material delay. So let's pause for just a minute.
How come you called that a third order when we actually have 5 stocks in there?
Third order material delay.
Okay, so we still have 4 stocks in our delay. Why are you calling it a third order?
There are 3 stocks in the delay. Supply line 1, supply line 2, and supply line 3.
Oh, okay.
This stock is not a delay. That's the state of the system.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and this is an information delay. First order information delay. I didn't make that clear maybe last time. Okay, so like with Jack Homer, those 2 pictures I have in the delay, did I still have that open? I can't remember. Okay, so like over here. So Jack said, this isn't working. Maybe a third order delay would work better. And you remember down here, there is a way to estimate some of the parameters and stuff. So again, you gotta play with these things to get it to, you know, you say, okay, I need a delay. Well, what kind of delay? And you got to play around with it a little bit to get it nailed down, right? So let's say, the first order delay is not getting me there. A third order delay might be getting there. And we're remembering we also have steady state error. And that's a problem if we're going to have any growth or decline. So that's going to be an issue. Okay, so what's the difference? So we have our normal arrival time. It's still 3 weeks or whatever. I don't even know what I said here. What is it? Months? Probably should be weeks. But notice it'll say that's the supply line. We got the normal arrival time, but I divide it into thirds equally. Okay. Same thing here. I divide it into thirds equally. So whatever the normal arrival time is, it's a third of it in each step. Now, Sturman would tell us back in the day when I was young and my hair was not gray and I had low body fat. In the good old days. He said, what if it doesn't make sense to divide the delay equally among the 3? What if it's 3 distinct processes that have different, like it's a manufacturing assembly line, and this machine goes really quick and this one takes a lot longer, this one takes a lot longer. He says, well, then you don't divide it equally. You say, this is 5 minutes here, 17 minutes here, whatever. But if it's just a generic third order delay, you divide it into a third.
But couldn't you easily change that with, putting a weighting parameter in each one? And I mean, obviously it's if your supply line 1 takes 17 minutes and then 3 only takes 2 minutes, then that's gonna be a bottleneck for you, that first.
Yeah, but the thing is,
stop.
we have a normal arrival time and we're just dividing it equally among the 3
Right.
stages.
I guess I'm
If each
asking,
of
okay,
these
how
is
do
a
you do it when
distinct-
it's not the same? How do you do it when it's not the same?
Well, you don't do this, right? You'd have, instead of normal arrival time, you'd have whatever the arrival time is, whatever the arrival time is, and whatever the arrival
Okay.
time. Okay. All right. So that's the first change. Notice though, to get the whole supply line, we just add them all together. The reason as you can tell, I have a lot of models and I've been updating a lot of stuff. So when the wizard takes my Vensim stuff and converts it to Stella, it doesn't separate out the equations like I like them separated. I just find them easier to see. But notice we got Little's Law here now again, right? But now it's the sum of the stocks is the supply line, and then we have the arrivals is the end product. Okay, so so we have your normal arrival time and your arrival time. Did I have them? Yeah, normal arrival time and arrival time down here. Okay. Okay, what else do we got going on here? So we have the desired supply line. That's from similar to before. You have this times this is desired supply line, correction for the supply line. So that's this is copied there and time to correct. Okay. Correction for the stock and replace on average what we're losing. Make sure we don't have order a negative beer from our supplier. So in the beer game, there's 2 delays, right? So there's 2 delays before you get your beer. Material delays on the game board, right? You remember playing the beer game? So instead of 3, so you'd have a second order delay if you wanted to literally, sort of replicate the beer game. Okay, so again, if we go to 0 here, do we have equilibrium? Got to make sure we're stout. That works out. If we have a 1, if we get a step, how we doing? Now, one kind of fun thing to do is to say, how does that differ from a first order delay? And I'm not sure, you might have to run it out longer. I'm not sure we want to take our time doing that right now, but in the case of, let's say, a step, does it really matter all that much? It's a little, you have to almost have them side by side. And it doesn't matter. In this case, with a step, it doesn't matter all that much. Let's see. Oh, here we go. And again, you go through the process. You're going to not be surprised that, if we do a pulse, it's going to be fine. But how about, I'll tell you, it's fine, except let's go to a ramp. And again, we're going to have steady state error. Okay, so if the order of the delay was 3rd order or 4th order or 9th order with this structure, that's fine in terms of the order of the delay, but we're still going to have steady state error. So it's one thing to fix the delay structure. So in Jack's case, 1st order delay just wasn't matching the reference mode. But it could be that, we're modeling the beer game and there's only 2 stocks in the delay. So it shouldn't be 3rd order, it should be 2nd order delay. Or you might say, well, it's 3rd order, but it's a manufacturing process, 17 minutes, 4 minutes, 19 minutes. So it can't be a third of the normal arrival time. Got to modify it. Or you might say it's really a 5-step process. Bing, 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 bing. It's a 5th order delay. Okay, but it's distinct. So instead of using the canned function for an nth order delay and you put in 5, you have to explicitly model it with the miscellaneous, whatever the delays are at each step. So with ordering functions, you have to, first of all, what's the delay? What is the order of the delay? And is it going to be a generic time shape for the delay? First order, third order, infinite order are the sort of the big 3, right? Does any of those get me there? Or is it going to be nth order where you could play with it a little bit? You look at that Erlang formula and try and get it to match the data. Or is it a distinct set of processes with different, you don't allocate. So if you use the delay functions, it's going to allocate them equally as well, right? If you go here, right? If you get an order of delay, what is it? A 12th order delay here. Sorry. I stopped sharing just a minute. If you do a 12th order delay here, there would be, and then if you went over here and there were 12 stocks instead of 3, you would be allocating a 12th, the 12th, the 12th, the 12th, if it's just for the time shape of the delay. If it's 12 distinct steps in some process, each with different delay times, then you can't use the canned function. You've got to lay it all out, right? Is everybody getting that point in terms of the delay structure in an ordering function?
Mhm.
Okay, everybody sees the distinction. Now, once you got the delay under control, then you're among the things you're worried about. Do I need first order control? Something going to go negative on me and it shouldn't. And do I have steady state error? Can the thing get locked into something where no matter what I'm ordering, I can't get what I want? My delivery delay is always going to be not my desired delivery delay. My inventory is never going to be my desired inventory. No matter what corrective action I'm trying to take, I can't do it. That's steady state error. So we need to find out if we have it. And if we have it, we have to address it. Yes? I
agree.
Take it from a fire hose. Go,
No, I
go,
agree.
go. Okay.
No, I mean, I get it. I guess I'm really curious about what it looks like when every single delay, every single stock has a different time that it takes to go through the stock.
Well, you can do that on your own. I mean, that's not hard to do. You can take.
And then how do you fix, how do
goofing
you implement a correction for that?
Well, that's a good thing to practice. It's not hard, but we'll leave that for you to do on your own. Okay. So anyway, so we push on because I'm watching the clock here. So what do we have here? Here we have, let's see, something's covered up here. So n equal. So I must have changed the molecule and not changed it in all these ordering functions. It's not, the fate of the Republic doesn't hinge on this, but yeah, I like tidy models. But so what do we have here? Let me first put this thing into equilibrium. Okay, we're good. So now we're circling back to a first order material delay. Okay, that's the one. No, not that one. This one. And when we put in number 5 here, we had steady state error. Okay, so let's circle back and see if we can fix that. Is it this one? No. Okay. So if we go here and put in number 5, now we fixed it. Right? So if you compare that this, here we got the railroad tracks, and here we don't. We fixed it, at least with the first order material delay. So how did we fix it? Okay, so well, we have the correction for the stock. So here's your desired stock, normal stock coverage again, stock coverage. What did I call that? Delivery, delivery delay. I can't remember what the heck I called it. Sorry, I changed the names on it. Yeah. I'm not
I
doing
got
that purposely.
I got it. I got it.
Not doing it purposely. First order control is in here, desired stock. So, we're taking expected departures times the coverage to get desired stock. And here's our proportional control structure. But wait a minute, wasn't this an adaptive expectation structure from Bill Phillips on the park bench in England, right? What did I do? What did I do? Now, I put this in a different format initially, and then I said, oh, I shouldn't do that because I want it to be consistent. But then I said, oh, I'll leave it to show them just a different way to do it, slightly different way to do it. So what I did was I did the modules here, what I like to call them sectors. So see here, expected departures. So now I use that Hahnemann and Tversky, anchoring and adjustment, formulation that I used to Glenn Grimes hog prices, and I fixed the Herod model and all that. So now the departures are, where are they in here? Perceived. So here's departures from the ordering sector. So the departures here, see it says provides output. So see, it's got like another circle inside the circle.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
Okay.
subtle.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
that's because I said, I want that to provide output to another module or another sector.
Yeah, next sector. Okay.
Okay, so it's available to other modules. And then over here, I said, I wanted to enter this structure here. So I said, it's a module that accepts input.
Oh, that's
But
groovy.
input the departures from the ordering sector. So they link.
Okay, got it.
Now it goes into the perception, which is just that same structure that used to be the expectations. Now it's perception. Perception is used to make the reference condition the anchor. Then the trend is computed and the managers form an opinion of the trend, and using the opinion of the trend and the opinion of what's going on here, the perception of the input, expectations are formed. And you can see here, it provides output. Output to where?
The ordering sector.
Or here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Accepts input. There's
Okay.
the expectations coming in there. Now I could have just put that whole structure over here,
Yeah, I get it.
right? The
But
reason
this is much neater. This is much neater.
it is neat, yeah, it is neater. Because of course, here was the old structure, just right there. So I could have put the bigger structure, and I could have made the stock smaller and try to, but instead I said, oh, when I was doing it, let's use the modules just to show you how to, or just to do it to make it cleaner. But then I said, oh, to make it consistent, I should put it back. I should put it here. And then I said, no, I'll show them how to use the modules. So, okay. So now here's your expectations, right? Along with the stock coverage, that's your desired stock. Here's your actual stock. Here's the proportional control structure for the stock. Okay. Now look at this. Here's the perceived trend in the departures. I call them, yeah, departures. So how are the departures trending? So here, see, this is provides output. So the expected trend goes over here. Okay. So the correction for the growth in the stock is stock times the expected trend. So now, see, we got the arrival rate. Now we're going to compute the desired arrival rate. So this is similar to when we ran everything just in here in the simpler structure. So
Mhm.
now we have the correction for the stock, the correction for the growth in the stock, and then our expected departures. So we want to correct for the stock. We want to replace what we think or expect we're losing, but now we're also correcting for any growth we expect in the stock. So we have that ramp.
So I'm seeing here that you're with these expectations, you know, expected departure and all that, you can anticipate how you're going to manage your inventory to have just what you need for like seasonal products, for example, not beer. You know, that's highly dependent on what you expect, you know, your order rate is going to be dependent on what time of year it is for a
Well,
seasonal.
okay, so if we put in, what is it, number 3? Yeah, 3 is sinusoidal. There's your seasonality. So if you look at when you have an oscillating system, like when you looked at the Glenn Grimes data, you miss the turning points a lot of times. That's very common, right? And that's what you see here, and it attenuates it a bit and whatever.
But if you have data from previous years and you know when these products start to sell based on a seasonal influence, then you should be able to improve that sinusoid lag time, right?
Yeah, these are test inputs, right? You're not saying that the model knows it's always going to go through this pattern, so it's waiting for the pattern. In this case, it's just reacting to whatever exogenous input you're throwing at it and asking, does the system that you're testing respond properly?
I guess I'm jumping ahead and trying to think about, okay, how can you use this model to help you better understand your supply chain problems with a variety of products besides beer?
Okay. All right. Anyway, so this, if you think about it, correction for stock, now we've added the growth and expected departures, right? If you go here, if you go here, that's what's going on here. Correction for stock plus expected departures, but we added the growth. There's no growth here, but if we added the growth, that's pretty much this. There isn't a max function, but that's a third thing, the correction for growth. But it's going in here, which is going right into the stock. In this case, over here, it's not going into the stock because we have a delay. So instead, it's the desired arrival rate rather than the arrival rate or the production rate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that times now we have the expected arrival. So there's the normal arrival time. So this is going to provide output to, now we use the same structure. Here's the arrival time. We have the expected arrival time. When do I think this stuff is going to be here? And that is going to provide output where? Over here. So we have expected arrival time times the desired arrival rate is my desired supply line. Here's what I want to have in here. If I want, given my expectation, correction for growth, correction for stock, this is what I want this to be, this arrival rate. But here's how long I think it's going to take. This is what I want in here. Then you correct your supply line for that. And then you also have to correct the supply line for growth with that same trend. So your actual order rate, now you got your max zero correction for the supply line for its growth and the desired arrival rate. And again, if you test it with a ramp or a sine or exponential, we're good. You can try an exponential. Remember, we can't take infinitesimally small. So some people run it way out and they go, oh, it's not there yet. I've run it out 500 periods. It's not there, but we're not The DT is not infinitesimally small, so it's asymptotically approaching, but it's like with carpentry, it's close enough. So
When you
are
get the
framing
caulk
a
out,
house, or
right?
are you making a fine mahogany cabinet? If you're framing the house, you don't have to be accurate to a 64th of an inch. But if you're, doing a fine mahogany, then you might have to get more precise. So for our purposes, this is just fine, Okay. The mathematicians might go, oh, it has to be exact. I mean, but then that's another matter. Okay. Everybody's following the narrative so far? Again, I don't expect you to just have everything down pat hearing me. You got to download this stuff and play around with it, look and study it, right? That's the only way. I'm bringing you to the water, but what you got to drink. I can't make you drink. I can show you where the water is, but you must drink on your own, right? And I'll show you some of Anne's stuff. She used this stuff in her dissertation, and she didn't know it until I said, well, there's an ordering function. What? And then we looked at it. She said, oh, yeah. You're sometimes not ready to hear it. And then suddenly you're ready to hear it. And a connection is made. So it's not unusual. Doesn't mean anybody's unintelligent or anything because they don't see it right away. They hear it, but they don't see it. You have to see an application for it and make the connection, I think that's very common. What if it's a third order delay? So this is not ordering 4. Okay, so now we got the, what did I do here? Oh, this is not, I remember what I did here, ordering 5. I don't remember what I did here. So let's go to ordering 6. Which one is this? Don't remember what I did here. This is, oh, I think, sorry. So what I did, I've done so many of these, I can't, sometimes I don't remember. So remember I said I put these things in different modules, and I said, oh, I'll leave them because to show you the modules. Then I said, all right, what if I wanted to just replace this is the third order delay, replace that, but without the modules. So what I did was I simplified the expectation structure. I may have shown you guys this last week where I said, I said Jim Linus, I thought from memory, in an appendix to one of his chapters, presented a simplified verse. So this is the Kahneman and Tversky thing without the official anchor and all that, right? So I simplified the expectation structure and I plopped it where the, I replaced it. I just plopped it in the same place without the modules. So this is a simplified version. So now we have the perception of the departures. That's the same. But now we have, we have a trend. I wanted to show you guys this. We have a trend function in Stella and in Vensim. So rather than computing the trend here and forming a perception, right? So the trend is computed this way here. Instead of doing that, you have a canned function in Stella and Vensim. So it's finding the trend in the perceived departures. Then using the trend and the perceived departures, you form your expectations. And this expectations equation is like this one here, except the trend here, it's the expected trend. It's instead coming from the trend function. So you don't have this stock, you get rid of two stocks by simplifying, using the simplified structure. And of course, the question becomes, well, what do you gain in simplicity and modeling real estate here, right? I have more space, but do you lose anything of value by getting rid of the stocks? Because you kind of got rid of the anchor and all that. So we got the first order material delay. So let's run the ramp. And it's pretty much the same. It's okay. And if we go with the exponential growth, so it takes a while to catch up. See, I only ran it out 20. You got to run it out a little longer. Okay, so so my point is, here's a simplified expectation structure, not much bigger than the adaptive expectation structure that has the problem. So that's it with the first order material delay. And guess what? Here's the same thing, the simplified structure with the, and we used it twice for arrival time as well for the third order material delay ordering function. We have noise for, I guess I was goofing around with the noise, apparently. And again, you know, you have the desired stock and the stock, desired supply line, desired coverage and the coverage. And the flows have got to catch up to one another. So it's fairly compact. Oh, the other thing that I did, sorry, I'm trying to remember what I did here. So did it? Oh, I know what I did. Sorry. Let me try and clarify. So I have a third order material delay here and the old expectation structure, right? And here, this is not a first order material delay. So what I did, I simplified the expectation structure and we use the trend function. But looky here, this is a little different. I don't have a feedback link here, right? If you look at a first order, this is why when you're looking at these, you know, look at here, you got this feedback link here. The equation is that, you know, molecule number 2 from the first course. That's not what's going on here. See, there's no link here. You get in here, I use the function for the third order delay. So that's, you only can use this if you're allocating a third, a third, a third. But now you don't have, I'm compacting everything so it fits on one page in this example in ordering function 6, but I didn't do the arrival time yet in number 6. I probably should have done that all in one. But this is a third order delay here, but it's made compact. And I made this more compact. And then in the final one, I'm trying to remember what the hell I did here. I used the compacted one for expected arrival time as well over here, along with the canned third order delay. And so it's way more manageable is what I'm getting at. So if you look at all of the old system dynamics stuff, so let's catch our breath here. So if you look at all the old sort of system dynamics books, dynamo equations and all that stuff, the classic models, there's a lot of third order delays. In fact, I would argue probably more third order delays than anything else. The symbol, the dynamo I guess you say the dynamo symbol, but that was in the days when you drew everything out by hand. That's might still have it. Let me see here. Yeah, I do. This is from when I was a student. you had to draw these friggin' things out, your stocks and flows and everything by hand. So you wrote out your equations on a piece of scratch paper, and you said, I think it's, and you wrote out the dynamo, L for a stock level, space, INV dot L, I think it's L equals, whatever. And then you said each equation is a symbol, and you took this thing and you hand drew it, and invariably you got to the end of your piece of paper and there wasn't enough room. So you said, I used too big of a rectangle. I use a smaller one and redo it. You get the idea. And then you went and punched cards and whatever. It was crazy. So the symbol that you drew for a third order delay had a distinct, it was a rectangle with 2 bars in it, and I think it had a 3 in it. So, and those are mostly what you'd see with delay structures, right? But nobody had first order, they just used the delay function in Dynamo. So doing a canned function for a third order or an nth order delay is very common, unless each delay has a distinct amount of time you're delaying something, then you can't use the canned function, right? Okay, then you got to correct for growth, right? As well as the gap between what you want and what you got, and you have to replace what you're losing or what you perceive you're losing, or on average what you're losing, or what you are expecting to lose. Okay, and then you got to make sure you have first order control in there too, so nothing goofy happens that way. A lot going on there. All right, so let's tap the brakes for a moment.
Can't see it. I'll make a copy because it's blurry, but it's got all the symbols in my Dynamo book.
Yeah, yeah, it's 100%. Yeah. So, let's just pump the brakes a bit here and just say, do you get the big picture? Like, I don't understand. I just am seeing some of this stuff for the first time. There's a lot of details there, but I get the narrative. We're putting together stuff we've previously seen, the test input molecule, some of the molecules from the first class that we then made into material delays and information delays, and we're putting those together, right? And then we're saying we've got to test for, among other things, steady state error. Oh, we have it. What do? We got to add some correction for growth, which is we got to find the trend. What percent is something growing? Is something growing at 1% or 9% or -3%? Could be declining, right? And then you have to correct for all that stuff, right? So for every stock, you have to correct for a gap if it's part of a negative loop, and it is with an ordering function. Negative loop means I have a target, I have a desire, I have a want. I want a stock to have a certain amount of stuff in it, and it doesn't. So I'm going to correct for the problem. So I have to correct for the gap between what I want and what I got. I have to replace what I'm losing, which is typically on average what I'm losing or what I expect to lose. Then I have to correct for any growth or decline that is expected in the stock, the trend rate of change. And then if there's a supply line, a delay, I also have to do the same thing for the stock or stocks in the delay in order to make sure everything comes out correctly. Stunned. Phasers on stun.
I mean, I get it. I think that, because I've actually facilitated the beer game a couple of times and played other games. I think the gaming part really kind of helps nail the phenomenon down. And if you haven't done that, or you've never dealt with trying to manage inventories, both of which I have done, it's maybe more challenging to grasp the stock, that concept of how materials flow through different stocks. But I mean, I'm getting it. I think the challenge, and I get the whole idea, you're building molecules and then you're attaching them to one another. I mean, I think all of that makes a lot more sense than me taking a statistics class for fun.
Fun stats. fun
Yeah,
statistics class.
Yeah, I would have a very difficult time trying to do statistics and explain that in terms of system dynamics. It would be hard.
Okay, so
And I was just doing some of the homework from the last class this weekend on coflows. So I think the concepts make sense together where you're just looking at the different ways in which stocks interact with each other to create different phenomena. And, obviously in the coflow, which it sounds like we're going to go over, some more in this class as well.
it's next, yeah.
So you're trying to tease out different attributes, but this is just, showing more the timeline piece, which is interesting.
So real quick then, because I'm looking at the clock here and do you remember Jim, did you ever meet Alan Borstein? Jim, did you ever meet Alan? Did you? So Jim, did you ever meet Alan?
Okay, here we go. I couldn't get back to the, I was like.
Okay, I had switched off, I'd gone to sharing, so I couldn't see you. So, did you know Alan? So Alan was a System Dynamics groupie.
Yeah. No, you told me stories about him, but I never actually met him. I might have been at some, going back, he might have showed up early 2000s.
He was a great guy. He was funny as hell. And he loved System Dynamics. He didn't do it, but he just showed up at and he's a real rich guy. So he's funding all sorts of SD stuff. But he would always say, the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure. He'd always say that. So, he always carried 3 cell phones and he had the same ringtone. So it would ring and he always thought it was his wife, who was named Jane. And he'd pick up, it was always the third phone. So he'd pick up the first phone, hello, Jane, hello, no. And then the next one, hello, Jane, no. And then it was always the third one. Like, dude, change the ringtones. You'll know which ones. It's like, why are you always carrying 3 cell phones? Anyway, rich guys who knows why they do what they do. But all right, so let me show you in the interest of time, because I'm looking at the clock. I'm not sure we want to start coflows because I think everybody, if they put their head on the pillow, all this ordering stuff is going to fall out of their ear tonight. But just to show you where we're going, to give you an idea, if I go over here, so this is from Anne's dissertation, but this is a version that I did and sent to her. She was doing some stuff and I said, let me look at some stuff and make some suggestions, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's see if we got, I'm trying to remember, this is for the coflow thing, not for the ordering function stuff. Let's see if this is, I can't remember. This actually might not be the version to show you this. Oh yeah. So remember I said to her, you got an ordering function thing here. And she was like, what? So we got, resistance troops being deployed, resistance troops in reserve, resistance troops reallocated from other fronts. And then they go into their casualties. They're off the battlefield, and she's got all the ordering function stuff in here, right? And what I was going to do is show you the coflow structure here. We'll get to that next time, and why we did it. But my point is that this ordering function stuff, you say, well, if we're modeling the beer game, I get it, or a supply chain, but it shows up all over the place. We're doing I think I mentioned we're doing the
clinical
trial model, and we're ordering subjects for the trial. Find me people to participate in my trial. And some people are being diagnosed with the disease. Some people, this is your supply line. Some people are have the disease and have agreed to, they're being made aware of the study. Then they're being convinced to be in the study, and they apply to be in the study and are admitted to the study. Then they have to actually show up, and then they're in the study, working their way through the study. You can see this is a big supply chain, right? So so this concept, it's amazing how it shows up all over the place. It's not just in supply chain management, you know,
Mhm.
of beer or something, right? So that's why I want to devote a lot of time to it, because it does show up, you know, in lots of places, right? And it
Yeah.
has, and you're seeing how the other molecules and stuff are getting hooked together and how we test, right?
So I think, and I think I told you when I was, I don't know, I don't have, it's only anecdotal, but there's, well, I don't know what the right word for it is, but at the clinical trial sites, these are the big academic hospitals, they'll vector off patients into other trials, or there's, you know, some trials are more attractive than other trials for various reasons. I've heard that I've heard that in different forums. So that's going to be kind of interesting whether you want to model like the entry in the trial, or just that you have another exit out of, you know, either you're not, don't go, decide not to go in it, or you have another thing and you go off to, you divide it down and have another subset of the population, you know, going off into a different space.
It's like
Often-
project management where you divide your staff between, they're working on 2 projects simultaneously.
Yeah.
Part of their time is here.
Yeah, you probably just have them disappear. You know, the strength of that attractiveness will change a fraction and will go off into oblivion.
So,
Make 'em-
anyway, yeah, the point is there's applications of some of these structures that are obvious to everybody as we sit here. You're thinking, oh, you know, in veterinary medicine, or, you know, in military intelligence or whatever. But I found that you'll be sitting at a meeting with, you know, about whatever, and suddenly you're like, oh, that's an ordering function. You know, it'll suddenly occur to you that, hey, this thing is, you know, I know how we might model that thing. So it's you know, organizations, you know, you want to recruit, anytime you're recruiting somebody, right, is an ordering function, right?
I find I'm listening to a lot of behavioral change, leadership, psychology stuff. And I am finding that I am recognizing certain, like, an affinity to change. You know, what is the tipping point to make somebody change their behavior and do something different? You know, what determines expectations and beliefs and all of that. And I'm sitting here, I'll stop and I'll sketch stuff out. And then I'll try and make a model out of it. But now that I have these generic structures to apply, I'm starting to see, as I'm listening or reading these books on even soft things like psychology principles, how they can be put into these structures. So it is kind of
Well,
amazing how
that's why we
starts-
covered a little bit of soft variables, right? At the Barry Richmond stuff and whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
James Meadows
It
stuff.
is, that is very fascinating to me, all of that. It doesn't have to be something material. It could be something without units, like anger or whatever, you know?
Yeah, as Barry said, you know, you might not be able to measure it, but you can quantify it. You can give it a scale,
Mhm.
put it in the model. And, you know, if you don't do that, you say, well, you know, nobody's invented a way to measure morale. I'll leave it out of my model. Well, then that's the only thing that you know is absolutely incorrect. I mean, somebody might
Right,
object to
and
the
the-
way you've modeled morale, but you know, and you can have a debate about it, but the only absolutely true incorrect thing is to leave it completely out. Because, you
And
know,
what was very-
morale exists and it's important, right?
Right. And I think one of the things you said that really stuck with me on trying to create models of stocks of things that are not material like that is, you know, because I was thinking, how do you make that objective? And you said, oh, you have to make a ratio, otherwise you're always changing your scale. And I thought, bingo, that's the thing I've been thinking about for a
Yeah, you
long
gotta
time.
normalize it, yeah.
Yep. And so I haven't had a chance to try and actually build something really simple doing that, but I've been thinking about, like, well, how could you do that so that, because one person's perception about anger or expectations is going to be very different than somebody else's. But if you made it a ratio, that would kind of solve the problem. So I have not had time to play around with that, but that really was helpful information at the time. Because I think about it, it does start to kind of frame my experience when I'm going through life, it's like, oh yeah, I see that, and I'll make sketches. I'm finding that I have to like make a sketch first to capture the idea, and then it evolves. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I'm just kind of discovering, what is my process for making a model? Like I have to do a sketch first to get started. It may be completely wrong, but at least it gets me started.
Yeah, 100%. You work the way you work, you conceptualize. No two people really model identically the way you, people say, well, how did you do that? Teach me to, be you. Sturman, teach me to be you. And he could show you how he does it, but a lot of times it's like, well, how did you know to do that? He'll be like, I don't know, I just knew. It's like my youngest son is a very good golfer, but he's a natural athlete. And I'll say, how did you hit that shot? Teach me. And he'll say, I don't know. I saw the ball and I hit it. He can't articulate how he does it. Right. So I think, there's things you can teach, do this, do that. But at some point, you just do it the way you do it. And not everybody does it the same. And some people are better at it than others. They're just gifted at seeing things or stuff. Light bulbs go on quicker. I don't know. But I think you can kind of teach people, you can get them to the, bell curve. You can kind of get somebody in the middle of the bell curve through the standard way of teaching this stuff, more or less. Whether you can get them out in the tail, now you start getting into amount of time they have, the amount of interest, how gifted they are, does it resonate with them? But anyway. Okay, so any other, because that was kind of a lot. I thought we'd go further, but as we're going through it step by step, taking our time, and even still, we could have gone through even more in more detail with a finer tooth comb, but it's an interest of time. We got to go a little quick, but we went through it reasonably detailed way, and in a way that I hope was systematic. I do so many models, and it's whatever. Sometimes I don't even remember. It's not like I did these 5 years ago. I mean, I did, but I've updated them very recently here, last couple of days. But sometimes I don't even remember what I did because there's so many different versions of things, and then you get into naming issues and whatever, and it's like, yeah, I guess that's inconsistent. I just didn't think to, but there's just so much, right? So, having said that, I think there's something approaching an orderly presentation of the material. That's what I'm hoping that we're arriving at here, is a systematic way of, so that on your own, for sort of homework, if you will. I mean, I'm not assigning homework. I think if you're a PhD student, you don't need me forcing you to do something. If we do, there's going to be a problem with being a doctoral student, right? You got to be self-motivated to want to study this stuff. But you can be downloading this stuff and looking at it and playing around with it, and like, what did Radzicki do here? What did he do here? Oh, I see what he did. Oh, when he was yammering about how they're the same, I wasn't seeing it, but now I see it, that I pulled the door closed and I'm taking a careful look at it. Aha, it is the same. Except you just added this stuff over here. I mean, that's what you really have to do, and run those simulations, study them. Is the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, everything's a horizontal line. It is an equilibrium. How did he get it there? How is that possible? You got to look and see what I did. What did he stick in those stocks to make that happen? Oh, desired stock. Stock is initially desired stock. Okay, stuff like that. You got to poke around and explore to see what I did, right? Rather than, because just this. Now go do a doctoral dissertation model. Not going to be able to do it. You got to jump into the pool and start goofing around with these things, right?
I will say, that's one of the things, like, because I know Najla and I are still working through some of the homework assignments from the last class, but they're all building models, so that's kind of helping reinforce the concepts as we go through them in this class. They're kind of working together.
So when you said CoFlows, you meant from college course?
Yes.
CoFlows, yeah. So because we haven't covered them yet in here, so we'll cover them next week, right? You'll hopefully see whatever you're doing for college. Yeah, you'll see where the CoFlows are coming from and why they're important, and I'll show you some. They can get, they're great, but they can get really hairy. And at some point, you're doing agent-based modeling. So you should just do agent-based modeling. But depending on what the problem is, CoFlows are very useful.
What is agent-based modeling?
It's a cousin to system dynamics, but what you do is you specify any number of agents. It could be 10, 100, 100,000, 10 million. And each agent is something, a cell, a person, a company, a molecule, whatever you want it to be. And then you give them rules. So for a cell, a biologist would know whatever the friggin' cells do. I don't even know, but they would know from biology or from science, atoms or whatever. Physicists will tell you what the hell an atom does and whatever. I probably learned that stuff in high school 50 years ago and then hit the delete button. But or with people, you can give them rules like search for a roadway that's not crowded, or buy something if you encounter somebody who's selling it, or whatever. And then you randomly disperse these agents into an environment, and you push the go button and they interact. Could be cars interacting on a freeway. It could be people interacting in a market. It can be cells forming a tumor, whatever, right? And each agent can be given all sorts of different characteristics: sex, age, income, educational attainment, whatever, right? And in a system dynamics model, everything in a stock is assumed to be identical. So if you say, but we care about males and females, well, now we need either two stocks replicating this thing that was just people. Now it's two of the same thing. Now one's male people and one's female people. Or you can say some average characteristic, a CoFlow, is 57% is male, or, or whatever. So there's ways to do it. But if you have, 11 characteristics, do you want 11 CoFlows? Particularly if it's a complicated CoFlow, that gets hairy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it, but it gets really hairy. It might just say at that point, this is really an agent-based model, not a system dynamics model. So right tool from the toolkit for the right problem. Don't try and saw a board with a hammer. Don't try and pound a nail with a saw.
That makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So any other what time is it? Any other issues or?
I was just going to offer up, when I was like looking at one of your earlier models, I just could see a difference when I opened the model. So I was like, okay, but the model structure looked identical. I could have just compared the equations, dumped out documentation, but I typically like, when I'm looking at testing models, I like to use table. I don't know how people, that's one thing I don't like about the Stellar Architect or most of the tools is the debugging in software. The debugging tools are usually pretty good. You can set a lot of special controls to try to figure out what's going on, and you can inspect variables, stuff like that. System-wise, you have to come up with a methodology that you feel comfortable with just playing with it. Like I just went back into the table and I said, give me every value, because if you just get you want the values at either the time step or you have a DT too, so you have intermediate points, and sometimes that's really important so you can figure out what's going on, because there are transitions happening that then at the discrete outputs, time outputs, they'll look different. So debugging techniques or something. I don't know how you would debug, Mike, but I typically try to debug like an engineer, so I need to be inspecting.
Well, I mean, it's very different if you're writing, Python code, how you would debug that versus a higher level language like Stella, right?
Yeah, even studying the behavior though, so sometimes I kind of treat it like it's math, right? So there are math equations. The math equations are computing new numbers. I need to look at the numbers and and then
I think, I understand what you're saying. I think you minimize the debugging headaches by testing the molecules to generic structures and chunks of structure that you're adding together first. and following sort of the best practice for put it in equilibrium to begin with, now attach it, test it, whatever. And it reduces the number of debugging things. Debugging, I find like the most headache is when you have an equilibrium. You're trying to get a whole model into equilibrium, like a Jim Thompson modeling for policy, modeling for forecasting. And you'll attach this to this. This is an equilibrium. This is this. You put them together, and the whole thing's in equilibrium. But then you put a feedback loop going back, and the equilibrium's gone. Now figure out how to put it back. That can be a challenge, a debugging challenge, or whatever you want to say. Or something has gone infinite or negative or whatever, and you're like, uh-oh, okay, if I got a first order control thing here, something's dividing by 0 or what, you know, so hunting that down. If you haven't planned
Okay.
ahead and use safe div and whatever, then it's okay, I got to find that now.
Yeah, I mean, so I have ways that I just play with it to get, figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And graphs don't always do it for me because I can see weirdness in the graphs, but I have to figure out where things are really going mathematically wrong.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's one, best practice for doing that. I think you just do it the way you do it. You learn based
That's
on
what I
the
meant. You
model.
gotta, I was just saying, you need to figure out, because if you just kind of poke around, you got to kind of like start looking at it's until like you said, as the models get big, then it's almost like I remember, like I said, the Homer model that I worked with for my qualifiers, it was huge. And so I went through that and I was like very careful. It took me days to and then somewhere along the line, I just inadvertently touched one of the values in one of the table functions. I didn't know I did that, and something wasn't quite right.
Yeah, and you can turn things on and off, parts of models. Like you can make a time constant of 1 billion, and it essentially in a proportional control, and it essentially turns it off. You don't have to delete it.
Right,
You just turn it off.
you have to know those are, you have to pre-plan those things.
Right, but what I'm saying is another technique is to turn things on and off when you're trying to hunt down what is causing my headache here. Let me deactivate this part of the model and see if I still have the problem. If so, then this other stuff I deactivated is not, I don't
Yeah.
need to look there, right? So on and so forth. But yeah, bigger models, bigger headaches.
Yeah.
That's why I've said it ad infinitum. You gotta build, big models are built from little models that have been thoroughly tested before they're hooked together, or you run into the crazy that you're describing, right? Okay. All right. So all good. So we'll reconvene next week. Hopefully this was of value. And we'll just we'll go from there. Okay. And I'll post the recording so you can watch this again instead of Netflix. All right, everybody. We'll see you. Take care.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
So my